From the missing to the mysterious, it is that time of the night once again where we bring in little Timmy Seanor, our resident Timbit, for the UFO report.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
What is happening, my man? What is happening? How you been?
Been good. Been doing really well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself? Are you staying cozy? Not too cozy. I know BC's on fire.
Yeah, it's pretty scary right now. Now around our area there are no fires. So I'm pretty happy about that. Kelowna, just 4 hours south of me and an hour north of where my daughter lives. We're thinking in Penticton, and we're thinking of getting her out of there, even though they're pretty safe there. She lives in the town, but it's scary. My sister is evacuated from her home in West Kelowna. A resort that is right by her house has turned to ashes now. It is brutal, and the fires are jumping the lakes, and they are sparking up all over the place. There's lightning that is hitting. A lot of these fires, though, look, before the conspiracy theorists go nuts, a lot of these fires are accidentally human made. And, it's not just the smokers out there, so don't blame the smokers. Okay. It's everybody from people having, a little campfire because they want to fry up some bacon, or they're on a picnic, or they are using a motorbike that could cause a spark, or an ATV that hits a rock and maybe causes a spark that sends things going. I mean, it's that's the way it is. Mother Nature's doing her job, of lightning strikes. Look, there's always been fires. There always has. The reason why more people are being evacuated now is because we've grown out of the cities. And when you grow out, where do you go? You start cutting down into wilderness. And that's what's happening. So it's a big push, and Mother Nature, for years, decades, millennia, has been cleansing herself this way. And so that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, some of these fires, they allow them to get way too big now. Into these super fires. And I don't really understand why. You see smoke, get it out. Plain and simple. Don't wait for the grounds crew. Get those planes in the air and start, bombing them. Here's the one thing that's different from the United States to Canada. In Canada, I believe that the pilots are not allowed to fight fires at night. Whereas in the US, the planes can go as long as they can stay in the sky. So that's a little bit different, So hopefully we get some rain here soon. We've been getting really bad wind, even in my area, which is believed to be a lot of the cause from the forest fires, as well as the hurricane that's coming up from Mexico that's going to go through California, Nevada, maybe into Oregon and Washington State. So hopefully that changes. Okay. So yeah, it's the way it is right now, man.
Yeah, fires have been devastating this year all over, as we know. And, I'll roll it over into our top story because there's fire in Congress too, in the UFO topic. We know that it's a bipartisan issue that you and I talk about all the time. And now a bipartisan group is pushing for a select committee and to have classified hearings on UFOs. And so the recent article coming from The Hill is also in support of a recent show that they did, an event, if you will, that they had an hour-and-a-half event on Thursday that was called The Truth Is Out There, UFOs and National Security. So The Hill is now getting on board with covering this topic in depth. and they had Jared Moskowitz, Tim Burchett, and then via the Hill actually interviewed Ryan Graves via News Nation interviewee, correspondent, interestingly, and then Anna Paulina Luna. So it was a great hour and a half getting in deep into discussions, asking some of the questions that we've all been wondering about, whether or not there's going to be a special committee being held in skiff locations to discuss some of the things that David Grush was discussing publicly. And is there going to be another discussion about the results, not necessarily in detail, but what their action is going to be as a result of those skiff information insider discussions? And so Congress is on their heels now, and so they're going to have to come back with some serious response. And so this is moving. Dave, I know you're pretty much on this topic too. How do you feel about this new push coming forward?
I think they are planning different parts of attacks, okay, to attack this subject from those at the Pentagon and those in the military who do not want this story to come out. They want to shut it down. And the only way they can do that is by continuing the pressure and finding other ways to soldier on and work around the situation. And I think that's what we're seeing here. You know, at some point, though, we need to have people speaking for ufology. Okay. Not the Ryan Graves of the world. Okay. Remember, he didn't see anything. He's just an activist now. He saw on radar something that looked like a cube or an orb with a cube in it, but he never saw it with his own eyes. When are we going to get different people? We have the thing that baffles me about this whole thing, Tim, is we have people from scientists to ordinary citizens who have been studying this topic for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Why aren't they asked to be a part of this? Love him or hate him. Where's Richard Dolan in this? Why hasn't he been asked? Where's Grant Cameron's invitation? Okay. Where's Melinda Leslie's? Well, I can understand why they wouldn't want Melinda. They'd still be talking, and it'd be 3 weeks in and she's still on the same first sentence. Okay. You have brilliant people, whether it's Gary Nolan, Science Bob, okay, Dr. Michael Masters, many of the members of the SCU, brilliant people. Ben Hansen would be a good one, even though he's tied to Enigma Labs. Where are the people who've been doing the boots on the ground work? And instead we get Ryan Graves just because he's a fighter pilot? Now, I'm not putting down Ryan Graves. I'm really not. Okay? But he has special interest in this. Let's remember, he has set up a couple of groups, one business and one activist group for former fighter pilots and current fighter pilots and aviation pilots to report their sightings to them. So that way they can have all of this discussion in pilot talk. But he also has a company that is trying to form some sort of defense contract to pick up UFOs on radar and other ways. He's a special interest group. Where's his bias leaning? Yet we have all of these researchers, Tim, that are untapped sources that people like Burchett and Luna should be going to. What about Peter Robbins? Guy's brilliant. Okay. Bob Spearing from MUFON, another brilliant guy. Okay. There are a ton of them out there, and we're not using them. If Stanton Friedman was alive, wouldn't it be insultive if Stanton wasn't there?
It's a good point. You make a great point. I totally agree with you. And I think the fact is that we do have activists and politicians covering this, and we do need a new breed. And I think that it needs to be somebody that doesn't have any chips in the game whatsoever. I mean, people like perhaps David Marlar, who is heading
Yes,
up a massive UFO
good choice.
research library where he just
Good
has
choice.
access to a ton of data that he could make available to anyone that wants it. And he's digitizing it now. So he could make it readily available. All you would need to do is look it up, probably by date or any, word. He's making it very searchable. So the other thing, I feel that it's unfortunate Lou Elizondo has gone so silent. Perhaps he's still working actively behind the scenes, but I feel this would be a great time for him to come forward and perhaps support some of the claims that have been made and maybe come out with some verifiable information. As we know, he's well liked in the community and speaks well on the topic and is knowledgeable. So between him and Chris Mellon, those would be two perfect candidates to also come forward, I think, at this point to give credible testimony. And I feel like another aspect of this that has fallen to the wayside is the fact that the Wilson Davis documents were accepted into history with Congress, and there was no follow-up. We haven't seen anything necessarily publicly, at least, from Eric Davis or Admiral Wilson. So whether that's taken place and there's lawyers involved, or it's taken place silently, or it hasn't, we don't know. And that silence, I feel, also kind of screams a red flag that there's something to it, if you will. What do you think?
Excuse me. I apologize.
Well done.
Um, I agree that there needs to be more, that we have to push things a little bit further. I'm not saying that we don't. The more we push, the more these agencies are going to get frustrated. Okay, we can already tell there's frustrations there. Now, some would say, well, they don't really care about what's going on. You guys are a bunch of peons compared to the bigger picture. But you know what? All it takes is a few ants to build an ant colony. And that's what we're doing. More and more people are waking up to this story because of the way it's been publicized over the especially the last year and a half. More Washington D.C. senators and Congress people need to get involved. Okay? But I agree with you. We need new faces. New faces never hurt. But if you're relying on the same people to give the same testimony each and every time, how does that move the ball forward? You have people who literally have rooms in their house dedicated to boxes of research that they are willing to turn over. I know Grant Cameron has turned over a lot of research to members of parliament in Canada for them to read up on. Hundreds, if not thousands of pages. Why? Because they reached out to him. Because he is one of Canada's top researchers in this field. Same as Chris Rutkowski, another good friend of this show. Where's that happening, or why is that not happening in the United States? You don't think Richard Dolan, love him or hate him, wouldn't add anything to this picture? Right? And that's what I don't get, okay? Because Ryan Graves is not an experiencer, he's an advocate. Most of the pilots who've seen something, okay, they've already reported it. They've already told us what they know, like Commander David Fravor or Alex Dietrich. Are they heroes? Sure they are. Absolutely. Don't take anything away from them that way. But what do they know about UFOs? What do they know over somebody who has, like David Marler, who has studied these black triangles, the number one resource in black triangles in the world, not just in America, in the world? Couldn't he teach a thing or two? And that was a great one to add, by the way, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Well, I
get it,
think
Tim.
yeah. And when we come back, we'll talk more about it. But I'll tell you what, I think it's because would have to ask those hard questions, they'd get the answers, and then they would know. Because those people that we listed know the facts, know the truth, know where it happened and when. And so if anyone was to ask, they'd know the truth.
But it's not just about the woo. And we'll continue that conversation when we return with little Timmy Seanor and the UFO report here in hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio. The final half hour is coming up right after this, so stay tuned. We do appreciate your listening ears. Man, I'm having troubles getting words out tonight.
You're doing great. You kidding me? Preston is such a gem, too.
Oh, both him and Dolly are just two of the most beautiful people in this field.
Yeah. How can you not just love them?
But you know what? I don't think government officials are ready for somebody like a Preston Dennett. Okay.
Well, my point was that if they did resource these people that are deeply in the know on research with the data, that have probably the actual paperwork, if they were to ask them, if Kirkpatrick was to ask them, well, then he would know. And then he would have to respond publicly that he does know about it. Right. And at this point, they don't want that as the result. So they're really working with blinders on. They're only dealing with things that come across their desk at that office. They're not actively looking for anything. And they said that publicly, the same way NASA seems to be doing the same thing with their quote unquote UAP research team. So I think it's very disappointing to see that the representatives on this aren't actively looking for the truth. Otherwise they would be looking to history and looking for available data from the list that we've just come up with between the two of us. That's a great way to start. But the internet, I mean, they could probably find a lot of great stuff that's true historically on the internet, and they don't even seem to want to do that. So yeah, paddling upstream, I think, on this one.
Oh, we have been paddling upstream forever.
Yeah.
We really have. It's just I just don't get it, man.
Yeah, that's why,
Like, like if I'm Tim Burchett and I am looking into everything that kind of goes along with this subject, why am I not looking into the voices of history?
well, I think
Yeah.
he might be. In a recent interview that he just did, he said that he's been into this since he was a kid and he read everything that he could get his hands on. So he knows quite a bit, I'll bet, historically. I mean, he definitely knows the basics. Whereas if you were to say who's Betty and Barney Hill to a lot of people, they wouldn't know. Even with all the documentation, they still wouldn't know who that was. So yeah, I mean, there's an element of personal interest. I know that Jared Moskowitz also has personal interest, and of course, we know that Representative Luna had an experience while she was in the military, where a pilot disclosed a UAP experience that he had to her. So she's definitely someone that comes with the background, and these are the people that are moving on it politically. And like you said, disclosure coming from the government is going to look, I mean, we don't know what it's going to look like, but they're fighting for their version of it right now. I have a question for you though. What are the powers working against it? Who do you think is working against this disclosure? Because we know that there's money to be spent on the science aspect of UAP research, right? Not UFO, but UAP. So there's money in the research there, but who's working against UFO disclosure, in your opinion? And let's say the powers against Grush and his truth.
Oh, I think that's the entire intelligence and military community
Why? Why are they trying to hush that up?
because they want the technology for themselves. They want the bodies for themselves. They want it all for themselves. They're greedy.
And they don't want to explain the years and years and years of cover up and spending and history that they
All
have.
it takes, Tim, all it takes is for them to have one name of a civilian like Tim Seanor, and they know about your abduction or your encounter of missing time.
I've had none of that, by the way.
I know you haven't. I'm just using your name as an example.
Okay.
Okay. That's all. I mean, imagine the lawsuits.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
quickly say hello to Dewey Cheatham and Hal. And who else has joined us here? Cowboys 5 rings. Stalled at 5 rings, by the way. You still need a quarterback. Let's see here. Who else has joined us?
Electric
Jenny Girl, how are you?
Jenny Girl out there too. That's great.
Tokeland, Philip Baca, and a reminder to all of you that our Space Travelers Club is open on Patreon. The link is in the chat. Here we go. Here we go, the final half hour, talking the UFO report with Tim Seanor. My name is Dave Scott. Always a pleasure to be behind the microphone bringing you this highly toxic woo that we have around here. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and join the Space Travelers Club on Patreon. Here we go. Tim Seanor is back with the UFO report. And right before the break, we were talking about, what do we have to do to get more voices into disclosure? And Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I know you want to spend a little bit more time on this before we move on.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that it is time that new voices come forward, but it needs to be something that has a little more validity that perhaps the community can point to. So let's say they reference somebody with a vast majority of evidence in their library, such as evidence and researcher and restorer of evidence and digitizer of evidence, David Marlar, who currently has the largest library of UFO documentation and history collected in one location. And I mean, that would be a great resource. And at this point, we do need more voices on the topic that they can see that's credible, that has something to bring to the table, that may not necessarily be a whistleblower or a witness. Maybe we could bring someone from the science community. You'd mentioned people from SCU. They present papers constantly on the topic, proving both mundane and anomalous events. So I think to have somebody that's playing right down the middle, that isn't necessarily got too many chips in the game, really is necessary for Congress to make any kind of valid decisions at this point moving forward, and they need to tap it.
Well, they also need to get fresh voices, fresh information. Okay, you don't have to, use the names that we dropped in the last half hour. There's a lot of names out there, probably more names that we've never heard of. But that being said, we do need more voices. All right, let's move on to part number 2 here, where apparently there's a new whistleblower going viral about alien technology Antarctica? What's this all about?
Perfect timing during our discussion as we were just saying we need new voices. This Eric Hecker has whistleblower testimony that he's been sharing concerning the secrets of Antarctica, and it's recently gone viral. In fact, he has done some interviews on a few podcasts and TV shows, and he's done a few live audio platform interviews, including Sean Ryan's channel. And you can kind of go there and see it, but it's gone viral because of the incredible information that he has concerning his time while he was a contractor for Raytheon and allegedly at a research base in Antarctica. And he is the latest person to come forward claiming direct knowledge of aliens, UFOs, and advanced weapon systems. So there are a few interviews out there, but the one that comes to mind is some kind of technology that can not only penetrate the earth, but they're calling like a bio op because there was massive secret operations going on that only a few people were even in the know on. And so, Dave, there's a lot of mystery in Antarctica, and I'm sure you've heard some of the stories, but this whistleblower in particular, I can get into some of the details here with you, but I know you're a little bit familiar with new whistleblowers coming forward like this and coming from contractors working for companies like Raytheon. Is this the kind of voice that we need? And what does it take for people to take this as a credible witness?
Well, you know what? We've seen Eric Hecker on the scene for a few months now, going public about being a whistleblower. And I think, if the guy is legit with his expertise, his knowledge, his security clearances for the agencies that he worked for, hey, good on him. Good on him for coming on out. We need more. We need about, 100 to 200 more. But that being said, when you get into the woo aspect of things, like aliens in Antarctica, and maybe they got a secret base under the polar ice surface, that's where it gets a little bit haywire, where a lot of the politicians start getting afraid that they are, falling for somebody who's just trying for their 15 minutes of fame. All right. Now, I'm not saying it isn't that way, but you never know. Anything is possible. So, do I encourage more whistleblowers to come out? 100% absolutely. They need to come out. They really need to come out and tell the public exactly what they know.
I have a question for you, Dave, because I know as a reporter, you like to kind of go down the middle on things. And so I'm going to ask you a kind of down the middle question on this. Um, Given that there are going to be so many whistleblowers and witnesses coming forward with claims, at what point do we see this as just a distraction for government spending? And, people that are anyone that's willing to come out with a story like this is kind of in support of potentially that kind of spending, opposed to the credible witnesses that are coming forward with maybe something that is a little bit more mundane, but still goes in the UAP category, as we've discussed, a light in the sky, or perhaps something that, did come from China, but it falls into the same realm as alien technology in Antarctica. Do you see what my question is?
Yes, I do. And I'm trying to formulate a proper answer for you. Um I think if the person has a good resume and they are brave enough to come out, eventually one of these people is going to have to bring some evidence with them. Now, that evidence may not ever see the public eye, like what David Grush had brought forward and put into evidence. But we need something. The public needs something. The news outlets need something. whether it's a photo, not of an orb that's 15 miles away, not of a shot of a blurry set of lights in the sky that looks like a bokeh triangle. There's got to be a leak of something. The government, and you remember Random Guy telling us this. The government is not good at keeping secrets. So how have they been able to keep the lid on the UFO story? And the theory behind that is it's because there is no UFO story. Do you remember that conversation with him? Okay. So the fact that we have these whistleblowers that are willing to talk, that means there's probably what, 10, 15,000 other potential eyewitnesses from the 60s on up who we could have used but haven't. So eventually they got to give us something. They're not going to give us a crash retrieval. They're not going to give us the alien bodies, so we can scratch those two off the list right now. But the question is, what do we do with what we have left? Right now, I would take a good video before AI really becomes a part of mainstream society, which is where it's heading. I would take a good video. One that's going to, and not just, what we saw in Go Fast Gimbal or Tic Tac, but I want to see a video of something majorly weird or strange that was caught. Maybe a UFO landing. Maybe a UFO takeoff. What about you, Tim? Make sure your mic's on.
Yeah, I love that. And how do you think Congress is going to handle that, knowing that they have potentially to look into what David Grush's claims were with alien bodies and crafts, and then Eric Hecker's claims from being a contractor at Raytheon saying things like, big science words, some pretty scary words, including, weapons that can cause earthquakes and UFO air traffic control. Um, you know, it sounds a little bit out there, but at the same rate, we have to consider that in the same realm as it needs to be looked into deeper because it's being made a claim of,
Absolutely.
and at this point, it's going to be in front of Congress. And so it has to be taken seriously. Now, I kind of brought up the fact that the Wilson Davis documents have kind of fallen to the wayside. Are we going to see some of these other big claims fall to the wayside and not get looked into, do you think, Dave? Or do you think that they're going to do what they say and do some of these deeper dives in the skiffs and, do the congressional uh, well, they'd said that they were going to actually hold specific meetings on these topics. So do you think that's going to happen on all of these massive claims?
Well, I mean, but that's what I'm saying, Tim, is all of this information is being held behind the scenes, gets put in some file that is probably in Burchett's office or somebody else's office. Okay. What about the public? Give us something. Okay. There are a lot of critics in the UFO world right now, more so than we've ever seen before. And the majority of them, whether it's Mick West, Michael Huntington, okay, and a few others, the main thing that they're asking is extraordinary claims have to lead to extraordinary evidence. What's the evidence that this is happening? We're hearing a lot of yeah buts. Yeah, it's here, but you can't see it due to NDAs. Yeah, we have it, but you can't see that video. It's not for you. You're not old enough. You're not mature enough. So, I mean, we see the same thing with the evidence that David Grush provided. Where did that go? Mr. Openness, Tim Burchett, who wants to put everything on the public table. What are we missing, Tim? And remember, I told you, he needs to be called out. He was provided written testimony that wants to be provided in a skiff. Okay. Is it of national security? We don't know. But if those papers that Grush turned in turn out to be true documents, how is the public going to know? And Mr. We need disclosure for the American public right now isn't providing it. What are you afraid of? An NDA? You're already hated by everybody. They just hate you less than the other guy. That's how you get voted in. So he's talking on both sides of his mouth. And nothing really has been released since that hearing, or the results of the hearing, or what they heard after. So what was the use of it? I don't know. Your thoughts, Tim?
No, I'm with you. I'm waiting to see some legislation or some activity from those results after them having these closed door meetings or the skiff meetings and interviews. And that's why I was wondering, what happened with the Wilson Davis documents? There was so much in there. If that was verified, there's some massive information in there. And it just kind of got pushed to the wayside. And that is very frustrating. And to know that potentially that the players like Tim Burchett, Representative Luna, and others that are in the know whether that's been verified or not, and not sharing that is part of the problem.
Final story tonight, and I love this one.
Me too.
The man behind the TV series Taken, the man behind E.T., and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg, has a new docuseries at Netflix called Alien or Encounters. Just called Encounters, I believe.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tim? Spielberg getting back to the UFO game.
I can't wait. I thought Taken was fantastic. It was enthralling and it still holds up. It's not like what you expect from a Spielberg series. It gets into depth with a lot of character development, but I think it hits some pretty historical facts in there as well, in Taken series at least. And I don't know if the names have been changed or not, but boy, there's some pretty moving moments, and I can guarantee it's at least based on some historical fact. And now Encounters coming from Netflix, launching in September on the 27th. It's going to be a 4-part series. And of course, it's going to deliver. We know because it's Spielberg. But this is created by the same people that did Generation Hustle. And in this series, they're going to explore 4 extraordinary true stories of encounters with otherworldly phenomenon. And each episode is going to tell a single story. Strange Lights in the Sky over a small town in Texas, for example, told from the perspective of firsthand experiencers. And so in the places where the sightings occurred and guided by scientists and military personnel, the series is going to highlight the profoundly human impact of these encounters on the lives, families, and communities. So it comes at a pretty explosive time right now. And it also comes as an explosive new revelations emerge from military whistleblowers, right? So it kind of is in sync with everything that we're seeing in the headlines as well. So perfect timing and coming from the master himself. So this is going to cover everything from lights over the skies in the small town of Texas, submersible spacecrafts haunting a coastal Welsh village, an alien encounter with school children in Zimbabwe, and non-human intelligence reportedly interfering with a nuclear power plant in Japan. So some of those might sound familiar and some might not, but it's going to be a really cool series, and it sounds like that each episode is going to be at a different location, told from firsthand perspective. Pretty excited for that. Dave, I know you are too.
Maybe we need to borrow some of his budget.
Definitely. Any portion would be so great.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about this. Steven Spielberg, nobody can ever convince me, and I will likely never, ever meet the man, okay? Because he's so recluse. But I would almost guarantee you, like the late Tom Clancy, that he had so many insiders that are tipping him off that he can tell the story properly. Okay.
Yeah.
I really believe that the United States government has had close encounters like we saw in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie. It wouldn't surprise me if a man like Lou Elizondo was one of those Richard Dreyfuss type players. It wouldn't surprise me. Except you're not gone for years. You may be gone for a couple days.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think Spielberg has definitely had insider knowledge in his career, like throughout his career, if not. It's kind of like how The Simpsons reflects society and what's going on and kind of predicts it. A lot of what we're seeing in the art coming from Spielberg also kind of predicts what's going on and what's about to happen. But this one in particular, I think, is going to be great because it's highlighting something historical that we are considering to have really happened. And the fact that he's going to be potentially reenacting it in a way that's going to be acceptable for all of us, doesn't that kind of seem like that's preparation? If anything, this is preparation. Coming from Spielberg, everyone's going to see this. This is massive preparation, in my personal opinion. So that's why I was so stoked to see it and why I really wanted to cover it, because this is, in my opinion, UFO news in a massive way, because it's really headlining this topic and headlining these cases as being, the best ones that we can validate and reproduce. And that he had a plethora of options to choose from.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you. Nobody can tell that story better. And I'm pumped up for it. I can't wait to see it. I'm glad he's back doing it because, you take somebody like James Fox, who's done an incredible job bringing out a lot of these stories. But James Fox is no Steven Spielberg. And I just hope that he stays true to the stories that are there. Tim, we got to say a good night to you on the Mighty SR. I can't believe how fast this past hour is gone, man. But
Time
so glad that
flies.
you're here.
Thanks,
So
buddy.
glad that you're here. And, I can't wait to see you back in, hopefully around the beginning of October, where we could start doing our little project again. And we continue it up here in British Columbia, which will be very fun. And Tim, we'll go get an ice cap next time we see you. Yeah, we will. Appreciate it. Thank you also to Steve Stockton and our guest tonight, Preston Dennett, for a great show on UFOs. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club. Head on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.